and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host, content creators, or the production company.
In both life and business, knowing when enough is enough. Lao Tzu once said, "He who knows that enough is enough will always have enough." This ancient wisdom highlights the power of simplicity. In search engine optimization, overloading a page with keywords or plugins can ruin performance. Knowing when to stop is crucial. Simplicity ranks better, on Google and in life. Embrace moderation for success.
Welcome to the Foundations of Freedom with Jerome Huyler. A strong, vigorous economy runs on a division of labor. While some produce the goods, others provide the services we, the people, need and want. But behind everything we do, our work, our businesses, our daily lives, are the political decisions our leaders make in our name. Since we elect the men and women who write the laws that create the conditions in which we all prosper or perish, we all need to be fully informed political participants. The silent majority can no longer afford to remain silent. One of the most valuable services a free people require is the clarification of complex social, economic, and political ideas. Other media platforms offer biting commentary on the hot-button headlines of the day. This podcast service will explore the underlying causes of and the effective cures for what ails us. And this nation is ailing. Ultimately, to preserve the American dream, we will have to retrieve the principles that made that dream possible. But there are more pressing issues and concrete decisions to consider. So please stay tuned.
Welcome to episode number 6 of the Foundations of Freedom podcast with Jerome Huyler. This episode is a continuation of episode number 5, which was To Save a Nation, The Road to Recovery. In the previous 3 episodes, Dr. Huyler explained A, why the president's erstwhile efforts to cut public spending will not yield lasting fiscal relief, B, the calamitous impact runaway public spending and sky-high taxes and deepening federal debt obligations will ultimately have on the forgotten men and women of the country, and C, the course of action the American people must take to avert the calamities to come and reduce the dire tax and regulatory burdens they're suffering from today, and the economic devastation that future years will surely bring. So, Jerome, what's on tap today?
This time, I'd like to point to other categories of spending that can be eliminated as well. But first, I want to make one further point about one of the proposals I offered in episode number 5. I said there that able-bodied working age men and women should be taken off the Medicaid and SNAP or food stamp rolls. That will save taxpayers a great deal of money, but it will do something else. It will give the current recipients of so many welfare programs the opportunity to find rewarding work, learn new skills, advance in productive trade or professions they choose, and so experience the pride that comes with improving the quality of their lives. Living off of other people's labor sends these able-bodied men and women into an effort-free wonderland of stigmatized indigence. It's stigmatized because each one knows he or she is capable of taking care of himself or herself. It's indigence because no one ever got rich living on welfare. It's why I say welfare harms most the very people it pretends to help. Incidentally, a relatively new Medicaid program is worth mentioning. It's called FreedomCare, or Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program, CDPAP, and it pays as much as $840 a week to any friend or family member who provides daily care for 70,000 seniors living in New York, Nevada, Missouri, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Indiana, Georgia, Connecticut, and Colorado. Suffice it to say, the program enables millions of Medicaid recipients to hire a friend or family member to do what he or she is thankfully still able to do for himself or herself. This is an invitation to spend billions on fraudulent Medicaid claims. And too many Americans, I'm afraid, are too willing to indulge in such opportunities.
So, Jerry, are there any other major areas of spending you believe can be cut without harming the country?
And how? Let's talk about the Pentagon, whose annual budget will soon exceed $1 trillion annually if President Trump has his way. In fiscal year 2024, the Pentagon was authorized to spend $850 billion to provide for national defense. No one believes that protecting the United States from foreign adversaries who mean us no good is not an essential government function. But ask yourself this: how much of what the Pentagon spends each year actually contributes to the nation's safety and securities? It's hard to say, but this much can be said. An invincible national defense is an essential function that only government can provide. That requires several branches of the armed forces, including expertly trained, well-equipped Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine services, a first-class intelligence community, and the most effective weapon systems money can buy. A mighty defense establishment is the backbone of a free society. Hostile nations must be made to recognize the futility of armed aggression or clandestine subversion. There is no other way to protect the nation's independent status among the nations of the world, or the freedom of all citizens who reside therein. As Ronald Reagan used to say, a nation prepares for war in order to preserve the peace. No schoolyard bully, or power-drunk tyrant has ever been placated by pleas for schoolyard peace and harmony. National weakness and policies of appeasement have ever been the breeding ground for aggression and conquest. That being said, the Pentagon should not have a blank check to spend all it pleases on whatever it chooses. In episode 5, I talked about cutting and closing certain agencies and cabinet departments. Much of what the Pentagon spends also needs to be carefully scrutinized. Military spending that adds no real safety or security to a country is of no functional use and should summarily be exposed and stripped from the federal budget. Here's just one example of such illegitimate, fraudulent public expenditures. An influential congressman or senator who heads up the Military Appropriations Committee in his or her congressional chamber will approve spending on a new missile system or fleet of bombers or next generation nuclear submarine or state-of-the-art aircraft carrier. The chair of that committee will steer government contracts not to the outfit, the corporation that will produce the best, most advanced and lethal weapon system, but to the corporation that agrees to bring his facilities to their congressional district or state, and so bring thousands of new jobs and a lot of tax revenue to his or her district or state. Often, a military branch will reject the Pentagon's own rejection of a proposed weapon of war and recommend an alternative. But the procurement of the preferred jet fighter or missile or anti-missile system will bring billions into the congressman's district or state and thousands of new jobs for his or her constituents. And that in turn will bring so many votes for the congressman or senator's re-election campaign. There must be a better way to fund national defense than that. Legitimate national defense spending furnishes essential protections needed to secure the country's freedom, independence, and safety. Any and all sums allocated for any other end serves another purpose entirely.
I don't know anyone who would disagree with that, Jerry, but I guess if I look hard enough, I'm sure I'll find some. I I have a feeling that you have more to say about where and what you like to call the reckless levels of public spending can be really cut.
It's more than a matter of putting federal agencies on the chopping block. There are plenty of those, but there are patterns of conduct that must be exposed and stopped. Let's look at a very popular Washington pastime that results in monstrously wasteful federal spending. Now, political science describes a phenomenon known as the iron triangle. Sometimes it's called the triple entente. This is an arrangement that brings together one, organized special interests and their lobbyists, two, powerful chairman of congressional oversight and appropriations committees, and three, the administrative agencies these congressional committees fund and oversee. Lobbyists, here's how it works. Lobbyists for any given interest descend on the committee chairs and clamor for special benefits, privileges, immunities, or exemptions. The granting of these favors very often requires action by federal administrative agencies. Those agencies have to answer to the congressional committees that fund and oversee their activities. So the bureaucrats will comply with the special interests demands, and Congress will reward the cooperating public agencies with more extravagant budgets and lax oversight efforts. Everyone is happy, except, of course, the taxpayers who have no idea where their taxes are going and don't want to know. There is a lesson here. Welfare is more than the usual social entitlements. Military appropriations may be made not to bolster the nation's defense, but to prevent the loss of jobs in a congressman's district. This is not Marxism. Political scientists call the cozy arrangement interest group liberalism. It's an apt designation. Astute commentators merely call it the swamp, the Washington swamp. Well, interest group liberalism poses a mortal threat, if not to we the living, to the generations that will come after us for sure. Two things are needed. One, we need to replace the current crop of politicians with statesmen who appreciate how urgent it is to shrink the size, expense, and intrusiveness of government. In office, they will work overtime to cut specific programs and close specific agencies and bureaus by the bushel. I hope they will consider some of these recommendations.
You know, I'm surprised you haven't said anything about the new Green Deal programs and climate change. Can that spending be cut without despoiling the entire planet and crippling human life on Earth?
Let me start that discussion with this unalterable fact. Left-wing progressives and Democrats are generally committed to three noble causes. One, CRT, which is critical race theory. Two, DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And three, ESG, environmental, social governance. Let's look at the crusade to clean up the environment. The environmental movement is alarmed over the fatal threat the atmosphere now faces. The United States, they charge, is pumping enormous volumes of carbon into the atmosphere, and that activity poses a fatal threat to the planet and to our lives. Their solution: end the use of fossil fuels. In fact, the fastest rising government expenditure over the last few years involved the effort to combat what's called global warming. The Inflation Reduction Act authorized 669 billion, mostly to reduce the country's carbon footprint. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, BIL, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, provides 1.2 trillion in funding for a wide range of projects, including transportation, infrastructure, broadband access, water infrastructure, clean energy, and environmental remediation. The BIL, that bill I just referred to, together with the remaining funds left from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, will authorize over 2 trillion in investments in climate, infrastructure, clean energy, and water to be released over the next 5 to 10 years. And to whom are these funds allocated? They are used to subsidize green energy companies that produce and install solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, and the batteries that propel them, charging stations, and any other enterprise that will use their government subsidies to produce clean energy and clean air. Once laws were passed to ban gas-powered vehicles at some future date, many a clean energy CEO saw plenty of profit opportunities. They applied and were awarded financial incentives to go after business, to go into business. How many of those companies will survive once the subsidies run out and the demand for what they are producing dries up? We can't say. Additional sums from these Green New Deal expenditures are given to a plethora of non-governmental agencies, NGOs, to help promote the whole climate change agenda.
Well, isn't the climate crisis a thing we should worry about? And shouldn't we be good stewards of the environment and prevent global climate change from threatening all of life on Earth? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is there really a climate crisis to begin with?
For decades, the climate warriors have been predicting the end of everything on Earth. Seas would rise, ice caps would melt, the ozone layer would dissolve, and beaches would sink beneath the surf. As long ago as 1976, environmentalists were warning of the peril that Earth would face if humanity didn't stop using fossil fuels to power industrial growth. In 2019, I believe it was young Greta Thunberg who set sail to warn that, quote, Climate change will wipe out all of humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels by 2023. The last I looked, humanity is still here and thriving. She learned that horrible prediction from Harvard University professor James Anderson, who also predicted there will be no floating ice remaining in the Arctic Ocean by 2022, absent a Marshall Plan style endeavor in which all of the world takes extreme measures to transition off of fossil fuels completely within the next 5 years. In 2009, former Vice President Al Gore predicted the Arctic Ocean would have no ice by 2014, which is the same thing Greta Thunberg said would happen by 2023. In 1970, S. Dillon Ripley, a wildlife conservationist who served as secretary of the Smithsonian Institute, warned that 75% to 80% of species would be extinct by 1995. In 2008, Bob Woodruff of ABC News hosted a 2-hour climate change special, warning that New York City could be underwater by 2015, among other predictions. None of this has come to pass, and yet the beat goes on. Climate activists are still warning that the Arctic would be ice-free at some point between 2035 and 2067. To prevent a climate calamity that, despite all dire forecasts, has not materialized, the Democrats and progressives would deprive Americans of every life-saving, labor-saving comfort and convenience Yankee ingenuity and the free market has introduced over the past 2 centuries, from wood-burning stoves to advanced climate control systems, from gas ranges to gas-powered cars, to indoor plumbing. We are expected to believe that the Industrial Revolution, which has dramatically enhanced life on Earth, and the fossil fuels that made that revolution possible, poses an imminent threat to mankind's survival. The claim is just not credible. Given the enormous sacrifices Washington policy professionals are demanding, the whole global climate change thesis demands closer scrutiny. Is it climate justice the activists seek, or are they just trying to punish Americans for their steadfast embrace of capitalism? Long ago, the philosopher novelist Ayn Rand called the Green Movement the anti-industrial revolution, the title of a book she published. It's capitalist greed and the inequality in the distribution of wealth capitalism creates that has always informed the political left and climate activists. The very idea of climate change is preposterous. If it was just climate warning, it could be tested. The climate has been changing ever since there's been a climate. Are excessively dangerous levels of carbon being pumped into the atmosphere? If the answer is yes, and if it's such a dire state of affairs, why don't the climate activists ever protest the far more dangerous greenhouse gases produced by the oil wells of Iran, Russia, and Venezuela? Why don't they hold massive protest rallies in front of every Chinese embassy in the world? China has been opening carbon belching coal-fired plants every month for several years now. China needs the energy, you see, to fuel their AI, artificial intelligence ambitions. Coal is the filthiest, most carbon-emitting fossil fuel there is. all the progress America has chalked up won't offset the smut coming out of China's coal-fired chimneys. Abandoning the new Green Deal agenda will save many trillions and allows us to close the widening fiscal deficit pronto. These then are a few more budget cutting recommendations that will help us avert a future filled with fiscal calamity, pain, suffering, and hardship.
All right. If you made it this far, thanks again. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for the audience. But don't let this be where it ends. Let it be where action begins. If what you heard resonates with you, share this podcast on your social media, spread the word any way you can, spark the conversation, help others wake up to the reality we're facing and the solutions we've laid out. Then find out who your local representatives are. Get involved. Write to them. Call them. Let them know how you feel about out of control spending, the crushing national debt, or anything else that's urgent that you think we need to cut. Now, we've made it really easy. You can download a pre-written letter to get started right now on Dr. Huyler's link tree. You'll see the links at the end of this episode. You will find all the links to these resources at the end of the show and in the notes on the podcast episode. If you want to dig deeper into these ideas, you can also get Dr. Huyler's books on Amazon. You'll find those links there as well. Now, they are a must-read for anyone who wants to understand the constitutional principles and the economic truths that built this country and that can still save it. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to our Rumble channel. There you'll find all the Foundations of Freedom podcast episodes and more content coming soon. While you're at it, connect with and follow Jerome Huyler on LinkedIn and Quora. He's sharing valuable insights and engaging with fellow truth seekers every week. Most of all, like I said before, get involved. This is not just about politics. It's about preserving your freedom, protecting your family, and securing the future for all generations to come. It starts with you. It starts today. From both of us, thank you for listening, thank you for thinking, and thank you for caring. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and stay free.